This video is brought to you by Manscaped. Stick around to hear more about the discount that they're providing to the entire upper echelon community. Okay, it's been a while since I covered the Epic versus Apple lawsuit because I honestly didn't really feel very much interest in the outcome. However, with the verdict finally handed down and what looks to be an effective win for Apple, things didn't actually get resolved, and if anything, they got more heated and much more complicated. For anyone that isn't aware, anyone who frequently watches this channel or any of the other gaming commentators on YouTube for that matter will probably have some sort of baseline understanding, but for anyone who isn't aware at all, in 2020, Epic Games unleashed a premeditated attack on Apple with a goal of disrupting their App Store dominance. The way that they did this was duplicitous and underhanded. Instead of simply bringing the topic to the courts, as any reasonable company should, Epic Games crafted an update that deliberately violated their contract with Apple. They obfuscated code and snuck in a payment option that was against the existing App Store terms. And when that violation was inevitably caught and punished, they had a 60-plus page lawsuit waiting, ready to be filed. Not only that, they also crafted a corporate propaganda video which likened Apple's iOS App Store to 1984 and fascistic dominance, and began to whip their legion of child fans on social media into an absolute frenzy. From an outsider's perspective, it looked like a disgusting and completely unprofessional way to secure an optics win, while projecting a self-imposed status of defender of the little guy, defender of the people, as you simultaneously strive to enrich your own company through disruption of a competitor who dominates an industry you desperately want more access to. The best way to explain that perspective would be to summarize that, in my own personal opinion, based on all the court documents and proceedings I have read, Epic wanted access not just to a better payment percentage or direct payment option, they wanted their own storefront capabilities unlocked so that they could start to break into the app serving market on Apple with a store of their own on that device. Basically, hey, you made this cool thing, this cool popular thing, now let me use it how I want to use it for however I want, at whatever price I want, because I deserve to have that cool thing that you made and I want to use it for myself. To mask this agenda, Epic made a series of false concessions and flat-out corporate propaganda pushes which would help guarantee that optically they were the winner, quote unquote. However, what they didn't anticipate is that a lot of people just flat-out hate them, and it's incredibly easy to see through that facade in the modern age of social media and information accessibility, especially when your CEO is making an ass out of himself on social media. So how did the timeline go? Well, September 10th, the initial verdict got handed down, which largely favored Apple. It really did. This verdict basically destroyed any possible notion that Epic would be able to offer their own app store through the iPhone platform, and in my opinion, it completely annihilated their attack vector. However, another part of that verdict was against Apple and dictated that the company had indeed violated California's unfair competition law, I believe, thus mandating that Apple would need to accept alternative payment methods and prohibiting them from blocking an app from directing to their own third-party payment processing portal. That's a win for Epic in theory, because that is what Epic had pretended was their goal. However, I am of the mindset that it is not and never was their actual goal, so the fact that this win was handed down in one singular category, while Apple was allowed to maintain control of the actual App Store market on the device that they made their device, was likely infuriating for Tim Sweeney. So September 10th, 2021, initial verdict. September 16th, however, Tim Sweeney sends an email to Apple executive Phil Schiller, which contains the following, quote, "Whether Epic chooses to bring Fortnite back to iOS consumers depends on whether and where Apple updates its guidelines to provide for a level playing field between Apple in-app purchase and other methods of payment. Epic will resubmit Fortnite to the App Store if you adhere to the plain language of the court and allow apps to include buttons and external links that direct customers to other purchasing mechanisms without onerous terms or impediments to a good user experience. In that case, our remaining dispute will be about competing stores, and I genuinely believe we could find common ground on that topic if Apple's position were based solely on user security and privacy rather than commercial interests." End quote. Before going further, it's time for today's video sponsor, which is Manscaped. I had a hilarious idea, if I do say so myself, to shave a giant strip of hair off of our dog to show how clean it cuts, but that idea got killed pretty fast by the girlfriend, so I have to stick with some more basic footage instead. Manscaped is currently shipping a special deal where you get an entire performance package complete with, of course, the Lawnmower 4.0, cordless electric waterproof trimmer that upgrades everything about the Lawnmower 3.0, it's just better all around, the Weed Whacker, a safe, effective nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver ball toner with aloe and anti-inflammatory properties, I believe, plus 2 free gifts on top of that, including a travel bag and anti-chafing boxer briefs. You don't see the briefs right now in the video because I'm wearing them. They are, no joke, the most comfortable briefs that I own. For a limited time, you can go to manscaped.com using the link down below in the description, of course, and get 20% off free international shipping and the travel bag plus the boxer briefs absolutely free with code UPPER. Again, that's manscaped.com, code UPPER, for 20% off, free shipping, and 2 extra gifts on top of that. Big thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring the video. That is quite the statement and reminds me of like a bratty child on a playground after the teacher comes and says, "No, Timmy, the rules of Foursquare say you can't run outside the lines and grab the ball from the other kids whenever you want to. It's perfectly okay for them to kick you out of their game." And Timmy comes back with, "Well, I'll only come back and play if they change a bunch of things so that I feel like I still won even though I didn't get what I want." No one cares, Tim. Okay, pivoting back to the analytical side here, this email from Tim Sweeney on September 16th shows very clearly that they do have a dispute over App Store competition, not just payment portal. This was never simply an effort to make V-Bucks cost less money, even though a lot of the kids think that's what it was about, but it was never really about that. This was a planned corporate attack against an industry that Epic wants to break into, and has now failed at doing so. Furthermore, the idea that user security and privacy would be aided by the allowance of Epic Games to have their own on-device app store is preposterous. It is an asinine and illogical assertion that any common ground could be forged, because it is an unassailable and immutable truth that Apple operates in its own commercial best interest, obviously. And this entire debacle is a result of Epic trying to take what Apple owns and use it for themselves for free. Tim Sweeney, over the next 5-ish days, goes on an absolute tirade all across Twitter. But sticking to our timeline for this video, on the 21st, Gary Bornstein, a lawyer for Apple, sends a memo that says, quote, "I am responding to your recent request that Apple reinstate Epic's developer program account, which was terminated for cause last year. Epic committed an intentional breach of contract." It's true. They had a 65-page, this is not the quote here, they had a 65-page lawsuit and a corporate propaganda video ready to go before the code was even introduced into the store. It was not physically possible to draft that lawsuit in the mere hours it took between the initial ban and the filing of it, so they planned this. This was premeditated. Continuing on, quote, "An intentional breach of contract and breach of trust by concealing code from Apple and making related misrepresentations and omissions. In its decision, the court recognized that Apple had contractual rights to act as it did. It merely enforced those rights as Epic's own internal documents show Epic Games expected." End quote. There are some docket numbers, additional sentences, and then most importantly, this is the part to pay attention to, quote, "Following the decision, Mr. Sweeney has publicly said that Epic wouldn't trade an alternative payment system away to get Fortnite back on iOS. In light of this and other statements since the court's decision, coupled with Epic's duplicitous conduct in the past, Apple has exercised its discretion not to reinstate Epic's developer program account at this time. Furthermore, Apple will not consider any further requests for reinstatement until the district court's judgment becomes final and non-appealable." End quote. Side note here, and I mentioned this, I think, at the end of the video in the actual script, Epic is the one appealing this. Apple has not appealed. So this is not Apple saying, we're not going to allow you back in until the court's decision is final, and then we're the ones drawing it out now for years. Epic Games is the one who is drawing out the process, while Apple has said, if you draw out this process, we're not going to allow you back into the store while it's ongoing, right? So the whole thing is just... Tim Sweeney just got absolutely obliterated there, and I'm not sad about it at all. It can take years for the rulings to become final, and Apple is completely within their rights to go down that road, whether it's Epic appealing or Apple appealing. Tim Sweeney threw a massive temper tantrum on social media, claiming that he never said that, but contextually, it's very easy to interpret statements he deliberately made in that way. September 23rd, Tim Sweeney posts, "Decorating your castle walls with the skulls of your enemies went out of fashion in the 1500s, but Apple's bringing it back in vogue." End quote. And that's basically the end of our timeline, because it looks like little Timmy might still be bitter, but at least he worked his way through the 5 stages of grief all the way to acceptance. His metaphorical corporate skull was taken by Apple after his failed uprising, and all of this was based on lies and manipulations he made to obfuscate the true goal under a cloak of benevolence. It's a fabrication and a trick. Here's a bit of a side note, because I definitely wanted to include this, but I didn't really know where in the script to do it, so I settled on now. In June of 2021, Tim Sweeney said the following, quote, "I really hope corporate propaganda campaigns don't become a permanent fixture of the tech industry. If a company has a problem, just fix it and bear the costs. And if it takes time to do right, then say so." End quote. And now, at the risk of a false DMCA takedown, let's play that trailer he had ready to go before deliberately violating the Apple terms of use.
Today, we celebrate the anniversary of the platform unification directives. For years, they have given us their songs, their labor, their dreams. In exchange, we have taken our tribute.
Tim Sweeney is incredibly indignant over recent events, saying on numerous occasions that Apple lied or broke their promise, but the reality is painfully obvious even for a simple YouTuber such as myself. Apple never promised to reinstate Fortnite. They simply offered, at the onset of all these events, a method of diffusing damages. They offered an option that Epic could remove the maliciously hidden code and then resume adherence to their terms, and then they could come back, and the process can play out exclusively in the court system. That's not what Epic did. They whipped their audience, underage audience, into a social media frenzy with corporate propaganda, played it out in the courts while their CEO relentlessly bashed Apple for everything he could think of, and all of it as they refused to make even a single concession along the way that would actually be meaningful. They made false ones and they went for optics wins every single chance they got, but they never actually did anything meaningful to work with Apple. They just deliberately undermined them at every single corner. So when we finally get to the initial verdict, where the courts hand down a decision, pre-appeal, and the judge says, "Get fucked, Epic, you lose on nearly all counts except the one thing you pretended was the goal, but actually isn't your main goal," Tim Sweeney throws a fit because Apple decided, okay, that initial damage mitigation offer isn't valid anymore. Obviously, circumstances have changed. And honestly, who can blame them for that? Shout out to Hogue Law here, because I wouldn't have known about this paragraph of the ruling if it weren't for him. I burned out reading this thing by like page 80, not even. I'll link to his channel down below, definitely go subscribe. But contained within the verdict itself is a key paragraph. A key paragraph where Tim Sweeney has decided to quote preceding terms, but ignore this particular part. Why that might be, I have no idea. And that's an extremely telling fact when you remember that one of his primary tactics is corporate propaganda and rhetorical optics winning. Sweeney focuses on how he shouldn't be penalized because Epic challenged Apple on a premise that the court agreed was unlawful. However, on page 172, the verdict also says, quote, "Even though the court has found the anti-steering provisions to be unfair under the UCL, the result was a measured alternative to plaintiffs' overreach." That's Epic. They overreached, and Apple's response, by comparison, is measured. These provisions can be severed while maintaining the provisions that require honesty to control the parties' relations and the coding of apps. Epic Games never adequately explained. Ready? Okay. Epic Games never adequately explained its rush to the courthouse or the actual need for clandestine tactics. The marketing campaign appears to have resulted in indirect benefits, but it does not provide a legal defense. In light of the foregoing, the court finds and concludes that Apple's counterclaims are not barred based on Epic Games' public policy affirmative defense. End quote. Basically, Epic used underhanded, shady, and nefarious methods of whipping up a public frenzy. They planned this maneuver deliberately. They had propaganda waiting in the background, and none of that is a valid legal defense, obviously. So, yes, Apple has some things to change, but Epic is not the winner here. And honestly, it's not even over yet because there will be more twists and turns inevitably on appeal. The funny thing, and this is also kind of a repeat because I inserted it spontaneously prior in the script, Apple hasn't even appealed. They might, but right now, Epic is the company that has appealed the decision and is still trying to fight the court's ruling. Tim Sweeney is whining and crying about Apple not letting Fortnite back on the store, while he tries to strong-arm them in his own concession email and tries to appeal the decision in order to get it overturned, right? He's still fighting the decision. He is still trying to, switch the verdict and switch the narrative. He has absolutely no right at all to expect Fortnite will be allowed back into the iPhone ecosystem. And it's hilariously pathetic that he believes in some way, some deranged way, that this makes him the morally righteous man of the people. Somehow, this blows my mind. Somehow, Epic Games has made Apple of all companies, look like the good guy in this situation. What a time to be alive. But that's it. If you want to support, there are links down below, primarily Odyssey, where I have bi-weekly exclusive videos, also locals, $5 a month for the channel if you like the content, plus another gaming YouTuber to check out, merchandise, social media, even a Kickstarter for a product that I'm helping to launch. So plenty of stuff down below in the description as links. But I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching. Oh, and I almost forgot, Manscaped, yeah, everybody needs it. Tim Sweeney definitely needs it. Buddy guy, buy that if you watch this video, yeah. All right, have a nice night.